What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Corporate Bartender. OMG. My friends, mi familia, Bartender Nation. You're not going to believe it, but this episode is next freaking level. We're talking about forensic listening, body positioning, the four kind of Ds, convincing people versus manipulating them, and yes, Asbury Jesus, Bruce Springsteen is talked about on today's show. We are stoked to have Adele Gambardella and Chip Massey on the program. Who are these folks? Well, you'll be glad you know when we're done. Adele is a woman who means business. She's been running her PR firm for over 20 years. She focuses on crisis communication and brings just the right amount of Jersey to the party. Special Agent Chip Massey is a former FBI Hostage Negotiator who leverages FBI techniques for everyday workplace use. Big air quotes there. These two heavy hitters bring a unique special sauce to the bartender. I can't help myself. We keep having these amazing conversations with these amazing people, and this, brothers and sisters, is my favorite conversation of 2024 thus far. And you know I wouldn't be here if I didn't think that you were all going to dig it. So buckle up, TC Beers, grab your favorite cocktail, and let's get right on into it with Chip and Adele on today's TCB.
Welcome to Sky Team's The Corporate Bartender, where we gather some of the best HR and people leaders to discuss what's happening on the people side of business. Now pull up a stool, belly up to the bar, and join us for The Corporate Bartender.
Welcome, everybody. It's your favorite day and mine. It's Wednesday, and you know what that means. It's Corporate Bartender Day. It is the 15th of May, 2024. May is half over. We're into the middle of Q2. I say it all the time. Passage of time befuddles me. And it's going to be Christmas here before we blink again. It is the 194th time we've convened this group of really awesome people. And today is going to be a hoot. We've got a couple of folks as guests here today. We've got Adele Gambardella and Chip Massey. We'll explain who they are here in just a bit, but they're those people that you don't know. Adele's the one with Albert Einstein peering over her shoulder. They're the authors of Convince Me, High Stakes Negotiation Tactics to Get Results in Any Business Situation. Oh, look at that. There it is right there. She's got a copy in her hand. So Adele's got experience in crisis negotiation, and Chip was an FBI special agent. So we got a lot to talk about. It's going to be a fun conversation. As we've been dark for 3 weeks, and I'm happy that you people remembered that we're still here. Hey, Lori Freemeyer. Good to see you. We are back on for the next 2 weeks, and we've got a couple of guests upcoming. Trisha Shields on May 22nd. She's the CHRO of Navient, and she's going to talk to us about maintaining a thriving culture with a remote workforce. That's going to be a fun conversation. And then on the 29th, we've got the reschedule for Robin Bolton. She's going to talk about people, leadership, and innovation. And that'll be fun. We will also be dark again on June 5th. That's a fun day. Lori and I are going to be in Mexico, and we're going to a music festival and having some sort of legal ceremony that ties us together for the rest of our lives. We're just making things more complex from a financial structure perspective. That's all. But we are here to talk to Adele and Chip, and we didn't tell them this, and we gave a little sneak peek when we celebrated Lori, but we dance our folks onto the show. So Adele and Chip, welcome to the Corporate Bartender.
We're good to see you. There it is. All right.
Adele's dancing. I like it.
Chip does not dance.
Sorry.
He's like, I'm too serious.
I missed my moment.
Well, you know, Chip didn't have his pre-show drink. That was the problem.
That could have a lot to do with it.
So Adele and Chip, thanks so much for being here with us today.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we always like to start with an origin story. We need to figure out where you come from and how you got here. So I'm going to start with Adele. Adele, you You run a PR firm and specialize in crisis negotiation. I imagine that was not the thing that was on your mind when you were but a wee child. What did you want to be when you grow up, and how did you end up here?
Yeah, so it's crisis communications, and Chip is really the negotiator because he was a hostage negotiator. I negotiate the business stuff sometimes too. I started out my career as a journalist for the best publication you could possibly get, which is George Magazine. So I worked for John F. Kennedy Jr.
I remember that.
Yes, ladies, I did meet him, and he's as handsome as you might have thought.
He's still alive, right? He's hiding somewhere. That's what we hear.
Oh, I don't know.
Elvis,
it doesn't look good. but yeah, I mean, I had to practice not staring at him awkwardly in meetings. But so that was an amazing first start to my career, and I started at first 6 years of my career in journalism, and really loved it, and had the fortuitous timing of being during the .com boom. So, but I also was the first to graduate college in my family, so I needed to pay my student loans off. So journalism is really a career for people who are wealthy. And I was not. So I sold my soul and went over to the dark side, as they call it, to Madison Avenue, and launched some of the biggest brands you've ever heard: 1-800-Flowers, eBay, Amazon. I mean, just huge companies. And was offered stock options, did not take them. That's another story. I cry a little bit when I say that.
I think we're already getting into the regrets portion of the journey.
I didn't even have a drink. No, I'm kidding. But then I went over and I really, I did well and worked for some of the big PR firms, and then started my own because I was really sick of my boss stealing my ideas. And
that's a whole episode right there.
That's an entire episode, isn't it? It's an entire episode. And so walked into her office and said I quit, and went home, started a company. And that was 18 years ago. I've been working with Chip for the last 5. We started a company together, which has a little bit of a different bent. But yeah, it's been a really exciting career. And no, I did not think I was going to do that as a kid. So
when you were a kid, I understand from the pre-show that you once worked in a movie theater. And at said movie theater, you had a shaky-handed, popcorn-filling moment serving a celebrity. Do you want to tell that story real quick? Because
sure.
You got to hear it.
So I grew up in New Jersey, and meeting Bruce is the thing that everybody wants to do in their life. And I was lucky enough to be greased up with popcorn and wearing a polyester vest and bow tie, polyester slacks which is the movie theater uniform. And up walks Bruce Springsteen, and I hand him a shaky bunch of popcorn because I was so excited. And everybody was behind me yelling Bruce, it's Bruce. Can you believe she's giving Bruce popcorn? So I'm sure he was not happy about my service, but yeah, it was pretty cool. Yeah.
Mark said the patron saint of New Jersey.
Right. Truly.
Yes, Asbury Jesus, I tell you. we had a pre-show conversation about Bruce. We actually didn't do anything we were supposed to. We just talked about Bruce Springsteen because we're all fans. So we're just here pumping things, all things New Jersey. And I suggested to both Adele and Chip that if they have not watched it, the Bon Jovi documentary on Hulu, well worth your time. If you're of a certain age and from a certain region, and Mr. Springsteen does make an appearance in that docuseries as well. So there's that.
I can't wait to see that. Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, Adele. Chip, over to you. So when you were a little kid, did you want to be an FBI agent? Was that your jam?
No. But, I was always sort of law enforcement oriented. I guess firemen, police, whatever. That's, I guess, all little boys kind of thing. Yeah. So, actually, I started out as a minister. Okay. I was a minister for 6 years. Went to seminary, the whole 9.
Wow.
And I still had this desire to do something that I felt was, had a little bit more of a danger element into it, I guess, kind of thing. Right. So I don't know. My undergrad was criminal justice. It just kind of made sense. Anyway, never got out of my system. So I just happened to apply. And It just so happened that they were hiring, and they were hiring a bunch of people. So I got in when the window was way open. One of the instructors at Quantico said, "Yeah, we know we opened the window, really wide, and when you open the window really wide, you get some squirrels in. So we're going to figure out who the squirrels are, right?" So I still remember that. And we're all in the back, making squirrel noises. But so at any rate, I spent the first part of my career in the FBI in the Washington field office. I worked national security matters, espionage, and counterintelligence.
You got stories.
Everybody's got stories, right? But most of it is boring paperwork kind of driven stuff, is surveillance, very, very mundane stuff. And then in 2004, I transferred over to the New York City field office, where I worked a host of violations to include public corruption. And I was team leader for their hostage negotiation team.
Wow.
So,
Eric, I have to stop you. As Chip's business partner and publicist, I'm going to yell at him for making it it's just paperwork. Okay, he saved 21 people from a hostage bar.
Did not. I was part of a team. Part of a team. Nobody saves anything.
No, it's not paperwork.
Yeah.
Come on.
Part of a team.
But anyway, he's being very humble.
I am not.
Too much
part of a team.
You guys have obviously been working together a long time.
yeah. Adele really gives me a hard time. She really does.
I'm sorry.
But Adele, you minimize your stuff too. You've spoken at the UN twice. You're the author of 3 books. And you even slugged one of those books out with me, who was, whatever, has difficulty with words. But yeah. So, and she's also worked for President Joe Biden. She was also hired to help him in his the cancer shot initiative, Moonshot Goal. So, anyway.
Thank you.
Wow. So, Chip, in your bio, it does reference that you investigated the 9/11 attacks.
Sure.
That's a big deal. That's even before you got to New York.
Yeah, that was in DC, right? So everybody, every agent, in New York and DC and Pennsylvania became counterterrorism at that point, right? We were all just pushed in that direction. So everybody worked that until we figured out what had happened. Yep.
But didn't you receive some kind of award for it, Chip?
Oh, here she goes.
Really?
No, we're not even going to get into this right now, Adele. No, we're just going to move. We're going to move the show right on. We're really slowing it down right now, Adele. You would say, Chip, pacing. Let's go.
I'm sorry. I just
we're just moving along. Yeah.
So everybody, Adele's going to be back next week by herself. I love it. So what brought you two together? Because you have this sort of complementary skill set around crisis communication and the hostage negotiation. How did you guys come together to start this company?
Yeah. So we met at an entrepreneurial dinner, right? It was one of those small dinners where you do go around the room, introduce yourselves, what you do, and so forth. And Adele and I just, we were listening to each other's intro there, and we were like, okay, we need to talk. And so Adele started, talking to me about it. She said, all right, this sounds interesting. There's probably something here. Let's talk further. And so we started talking like 5 years ago, August, right? And she said, all right. And then she started interviewing me, right? She started like, okay, what did you learn? How did you learn it? What was the techniques? What were the strategies? What are the tactics? How did you, get that in Quantico? And how did you apply it in the field? Just went down the line, right?
So
and
you're
she
saying
said,
you can take the girl out of journalism, but you can't take the
That's
journalism
it.
out of, got it.
That's it. That's how she operates. And so after doing that, she said, I think, we really have something here. This is something that's, is a huge business need. And she just put that over as a template for working with clients and communications and crisis work and so forth. And she said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to have put on a masterclass. This was in August. I said, okay. She said, we're going to hold it in New York City. And she said, we're going to do this in 3 months. I said, say what now?
What?
Yeah. So I was like, and sure enough, I mean, when Adele is in business motion, and really PR thing is she has a PR problem. She's a business strategist. That's really what she is, and she can put together, just these great ideas and strategies and implement. And that's exactly what she did. And we sold that thing out, right?
Wow.
And we did it again in DC like a couple months later, and then COVID hit.
You're like, we got this great business. Things are going to be awesome.
Yep.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So what was the focus of those workshops? Was it like business continuity planning, crisis communications? Like, what was the focal point?
The master class was really all about how to read people effectively, how to then communicate with them effectively based on how you've read them, how to convince them to do what it is you want them to do, and how to negotiate and how to do that effectively. And we had some really fun content. People loved it. We loved it. We're going to do it again, but we're just now we're going to call it something else called Training So Good It's Criminal. That's the new.
Whoa.
That's the new. Right? So exactly. I love the sound effect. I think I need the sound effect.
We do. We need those in our life, don't we?
Training so good,
them.
it's criminal. Well, the things that you described in that little run up there are a lot of the things that we do in HR, talent development, right? Talent, attracting talent, retaining talent. We all HR lifers like Lori and I, we often say that HR is like a hostage situation. So what's one or two little pearls of wisdom or nuggets that you could give our folks listening here today that will come out of that initial workshop that would be relevant to HR people?
Oh, Chip, you go first.
Okay. Well, it's interesting because we also developed an interviewing program that we thought would be great for, bringing in new hires, critical hires, really kind of thing, that we since developed after that workshop. But that's
does that involve FBI profiling, Chip?
It does.
Again.
Yeah, right. So I really think that one of the things that's kind of key in our book and in that masterclass is just better understanding of people. And, everybody says, we need to listen better so much, right? We do. Okay, right. We do. But one of the things that we teach is understanding someone's unstated narrative.
Ooh,
and
I like that.
What we mean by that is that everybody has an idea about you, your company, who you are, what you represent, what you sell. And there is always that idea in their head. There are tapes running in our head at any point in time, right? Thousands of tapes that we got going on. And they're descriptive of our interaction with the world at large. So our thing is that there's that tape that's running in their head about you and this experience. And there is a disconnect between what they actually believe about you and what they're willing to tell you to your face, right?
Oof.
It's always the case. It is, because we have to be that way to coexist on a planet together. And so what we teach is like, if you can get close to whatever that unstated narrative is, not that you'll actually like hit it on the nose, you might, but if you can get a little bit closer than the competition, then, somebody else's questions that they might have glossed over, and you now have a skill set, a way of, figuring those out and sussing some things that no one else saw. If you can get closer, you're going to have an advantage, right? And an advantage in either the things that people are holding back on, not wanting to tell you, not wanting to admit to in an interview, or also an advantage of connecting to that person. Everyone wants to be seen in the world today, right? And in a certain way, we all have this image of ourselves, and that's our kind of what we strive for in our minds. And we hope that other people see that in us, right? And if you can do that to someone else and say, I really, see you somebody of great integrity, of somebody that just, and also a real striver. I just, it just comes across so well. When you connect those two worlds together, it just means so much to somebody.
We call that targeted validation, right? So as you're like listening to somebody, right, you just validate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lori, you must do that a ton as an HR expert, right? I mean, like, I think that half of our job, half of your job as an HR person is to validate someone and push them to meet their potential.
Yeah, I think that's huge in professional development, to see things in people that maybe they don't even see in themselves, or amplify what they're hoping to become. But I think that also the validating and the being seen, sometimes that's the thing when people don't get their way, or people have to be told no about something, or just we're on different pages. The acknowledgement of what's true for you. I can acknowledge what's true for you. I can validate where you're coming from without having to agree with you, without having to, give in to a different opinion. But when you do that acknowledgement, right, that's where you can maybe get to some common ground. That's where you can start to have more influence, because you're being seen, right? You're making sure that this person feels seen and heard. And that's, I love what you said, Chip, about that. Everybody wants to be seen. Huge. Actually, I would posit that people want to be seen more than they want to be right.
Yes.
They want to be acknowledged,
100%,
that you're paying
100%.
attention,
Yep.
that you hear where I'm coming from, that what I'm saying is meaningful, even if you don't agree with me, right? Because then we can get past that into whatever.
You can actually pay people less if you validate them. I mean, literally. I mean, and they wouldn't mind, because they'd come to. We don't get validated in any part of our lives.
That's
really,
right.
Right. I mean, it's very rare.
It feels amazing, right? You're seen. It's amazing. Yeah.
So true.
Thanks for joining us here on the Adele Gambardella Show, everybody. I love it. I love it. So you met at a dinner. 3 months later, you're doing a master class. So the ship is sailing, and then COVID hits, and you decided at some point after that to write a book. As a guy who has a book, this is my book right there.
Okay, right? Yes.
I see it.
It's called You, Me, We, Why We All Need a Friend at Work and How to Show Up as One. Everybody on this call already has a copy, except for 2 people.
Okay.
We'll get a copy.
You didn't name them. We could have just been quiet about it.
I mean,
So writing a book, and it's no easy task. It's on a lot of people's bucket lists. It's a thing that a lot of people want to do. Not a lot of people do it. Publishing industry is a little bit of a racket. So you started the process, so good for you. And number 2, you finished it. So tell us a little bit about deciding to write the book and what the book is all about.
Chip?
Go ahead, Adele.
Yeah.
You go.
So let me say this.
Let me say
this. So again, this is Adele. She masterclass, 3 months done. So COVID hit. She goes, all right, there's going to be a slowdown. What are we going to do? All right. Let's think about this. She goes, okay, so we'll just write a book. Of course we will.
Write a book.
Let's do that. We'll just write a book. And that's what she set the goal. Here's what we got to do. Here's the number of pages. It's got to be, these are the publishers we're going to talk to. And it just worked out. Again, it's Adele's mind. That's what she does. She goes, she has a plan. She puts it together. She implements, has deadlines. Boom, comes the book.
Chip's really easy to work with, honestly.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, wow. No, no, but really, I mean, as far as someone who's creative and who is a good creative partner, he is really he validates, he's encouraging. It's very hard to write with someone who is not those things, right? So I mean, so having someone, and I think when you're writing together, when you have a writing partner, having someone who can help you and see your strengths and see ideas through. I think we had a lot of fun, talking through ideas.
It was a lot of fun.
Better. Yeah. I mean, I think we made them better together. It's a better book as a result of writing it together.
I love that. So Adele decided you're going to write a book.
Yes. Yes.
Got it.
Yes. I'm smart enough to know, follow what that woman says. She's got, she really has, every day, there's $1 million idea that comes out of her. That is not an exaggeration. We fail to capture it. That's my fault, because we don't capture most of, I would say 98% of what, she's got in her head. So that's what I'm grappling with now, is how do we do that? But anyway, yeah, with Adele.
So you wrote the book. So tell us a little bit about the book. How's it structured? What do you want people to get out of it? And why would somebody want to read it?
I think when we're kids, and I love this as part of the beginning of the book, which is like at about age 6, we're already pretty convincing, right? Like, and if anybody has kids on the phone, we know that kids are like great convincers or great negotiators. Like, it's like a natural skill. Like, if they want a snack and they don't think they can get it, I mean, they will negotiate for an hour for that snack, right? They don't give up. There is persistence in these children. So there are cats all around the world that are thankful for this skill.
Right. Yeah.
Come
well
on,
said.
Right?
Well said.
So yeah. So at about age 6, you are already pretty convincing. And what happens is most of us do not develop the skills beyond age 6. If we sulked on the playground and got our way from sulking, as managers, as leaders, we'll sulk until we get our way. Yeah. I've worked for that person too, right? And this is no fun. But like, the point is that we don't really develop our skills, because as adults, we have figured out what works for us, what works for us, and what doesn't work for us. And when it doesn't work for us, we blame the other person. We're like, that person's a jerk. They don't like us because, they're a jerk. And so we don't really take accountability for the fact that maybe we need to change our strategy to meet someone else where they need to be, right? To get that general understanding, like the title of your book, Eric, right? Like, it's the same thing. And so how do you get to that point of agreement? How do you get to that, place where, you need to go with someone? And that's really what our book is all about. Like, how do you get just a little bit more convincing? If you read our book and you get, 1 or 2 or 5 or 7 or 10 skills, you're going to be that much more convincing as a result. Just try new things, be open to it. And it's exciting.
People love trying new things and failing as adult learners. It's funny. Adele, you said a couple of things that really resonate with me, because flexing to meet people where they are is a center point in many of the workshops and programs that we develop here at Sky Team. It's the central idea of the book, right? What are the intentional choices and investments that you are choosing into in very specific targeted relationships at work, right? Not just hanging out with your people. We know humans are creatures of pattern. You said it. Our negotiating style and pattern is pretty cooked by 6 or 7 years old.
Yeah.
And same goes with the people that we run around with. We spend time with the people that we already have good relationships with. And a lot of times at work, we would be better served investing in relationships that are newer. Maybe we've got folks that are in our workflow that we don't know so well, we don't trust very much, or we don't like them because we don't know them so well. So we tend to back off of those social investments and take any discretionary time that I have and I go hang out with Lori instead, because that's fun and I know how that's going to end up. Versus maybe, Chip's new in my sphere and we're working on a project together and I think he doesn't like me and he's kind of a jerk, so I don't want to hang out with him. Right? She's like, yeah, I know. So how do you suggest that people choose into those tougher relationships? I love this notion of getting a little bit more convincing, and what Chip said in the bit about the masterclass, that unstated narrative. Because if I think Chip doesn't like me, I have a whole story about why that is in my head, based on nothing but what's in my head, right? So how do I, in a situation like that where I've already written a story and I don't have a very deep relationship with Chip, and I really ought to be pushing some chips into the middle of the table, no pun intended. Sorry, there we go. That's for you. What would you tell me to do in terms of your strategies and tactics for investing in those relationships that maybe are a little bit challenging and that I haven't invested in yet?
Yeah, Chip, do you want to talk about forensic listening?
I think that's perfect segue for that. And so one of the things that is pretty much the umbrella concept of our book is this idea of forensic listening. And forensic listening is the art and science of analyzing a conversation after it's happened. Because what we say is words leave clues. And if we pay attention to those words in a process way, a way of capturing them and figuring out, what values to assign to them and why, then again, we're going to be so much better at interpreting what that person's trying to convey to us and what they really mean, both what is said and not said. So what we suggest for people to do is that they divide up a page in their notes when they're in a meeting or, taking notes on a phone or in a Zoom call or whatever that is, to find a space on the page and divide it up into a quadrant. So we call it the 4 Ds. And what we have in that is like the top left is going to be about the emotion that's being present, right? How is this person, pushing out into the world what it is they're talking about? What it is they're trying to communicate to you? What, are they happy, sad? Are they indifferent? What is it when they hit certain topics? And then the top right quadrant is going to be the theme development. And that's where we, again, focus in on what are they repeating in different ways that, again, will signal that's important to that person. And it might be completely different from what that meeting is called about, right? It might be, 180 degrees off, but you're hearing it now for the third time. You're like, okay, it's a thing.
It's a
right?
thing. Yeah.
So you write that down. And then the bottom left is going to be about body positioning. And guys, what we do, we differentiate between body language and body positioning this way because we are creatures of movement and we are constantly readjusting ourselves to the world and our interactions based on what's happening in and around us. And if we can focus again that on, okay, theme development, got it. The emotion here is this. And now body positioning, I'm seeing, they might be fully engaged, right? They're facing full front, got good eye contact, and they're steady. Now, that's great. That's a good sign. But when they start to blade, right? They start to turn away from you and they're looking a little bit off and nodding here and there. But in general, they're starting to disengage. And there's reasons for that. And we talk about there's a host of other things, right? But body positioning. Then it's going to be the last is the voice. And that's the pitch, tone, and cadence of the voice. Now, all this stuff you put together, and you figure out where is the energy coming from? What idea is paramount here? What is it that they're trying, again, to impress upon me or this group that they want us to resonate with and stick with and develop more, perhaps, and just know about them? All those things together. And then what you do is then you're going to decide what value you're going to place on these things. Where is it that if you really took it to heart and figured out a strategy along with that, okay, I know that my boss, really values client relationships. And it's clear, because he was talking about, making sure that our time was accurately entered into, all of our indices. But really 3 times he hit on client engagement and relationships. All right. So I'm going to take that. And I'm going to then figure out what he said about that. And I'm going to use that and target validate something in there that I know he's going to appreciate and I know is going to benefit me and perhaps the company as well. Now, imagine this. If you go up to that same person about a month later and you say, hey, you remember that time when you were talking about putting our time and so forth, but I really felt that what you're talking about were client relationships. And I want you to know, one of the things that you did there that really stuck home with me, I started to implement, and it made a difference. And I've started to share this with other people. And I can see also that my team is starting to kind of gel around this concept too. And that's one of the things that we were talking about validation, right? Before is like,
exactly.
How many times in our life has somebody come back to us over something that we said, 2 weeks ago, a month ago, and said, it really made an impact on me, right? I mean,
love it.
But 1, 2, maybe if we're lucky.
Right.
So right. There's all ways of getting deeper into a relationship. And that's really what forensic listening is about.
I love it. Okay, Adele, marketing, PR person. Chip called it the 4Ds, and I got emotion, theme development, body positioning, and voice. I got E, maybe 1D, B, and V. So can you?
Yeah, when he says 4D, I don't like the word. It's 4-dimensional. It's like a 4-dimensional.
4-dimensional. Sorry.
He says 4D, and I'm always like,
again, right. Thank you, Eric. You picked up on it. Something else she's going to talk to me about after. Okay, let's center this a little bit better.
Didn't mean to get you in trouble.
No, she already had the note. Trust me.
Man, I'm getting it on this. No, but you know what? You know what's really interesting, Lori? Just like the best, most convincing people in the world, they do this naturally.
Yeah. And I was chatting with a gal who's trying to grow in her career, and she's trying to be seen as more of a strategic person than a tactical person. Like she's established as a go-to results tactical person, and she's trying to bridge that gap. Right. Into how can I be seen as kind of a higher order strategic thinker, and where's my value? And one of the things we talked about was kind of, it made me think of that, of really listening for where is somebody struggling, what's a barrier they're having, what's something that's keeping them up at night, and how can you reflect on that and try to synthesize, right, even beyond that conversation you're having, but to say, oh, I talked to somebody and this is kind of related to that, and I talked to somebody here and that's kind of related, and I'm working on this thing. And then you can come back to that person to say, hey, I really thought about what we were talking about, and I'm, wondering if these pieces would help in this puzzle, right? And it's really deeply listening to what's going on with them, and then actually coming back with some level of solution, even if it's not the perfect solution, but just demonstrating I was paying attention and I was very thoughtful about all of the inputs that I've got to how we could attack that, bring value to that, right?
That's so good.
And so, I think so that. That deep listening has so many advantages, let alone the giant one of relationship building, right? I heard you, I understand what you said, I acknowledge, I have compassion for, but that now I'm going to actually try to help you solve that problem. Huge. Yeah.
We had a client who was great, and he was just so wonderful to work with. And, but we said, you're a little critical. You're when you're in your meetings, you're a little critical. Like, it's like, that's kind of rough, and it's like, maybe you should try to validate people more. And he went around and he started validating his staff, and they were just like, are you high? Or like, just like, you're just like, what is happening? You're like a totally different person, right? And like, so you have to ease into it, right? Like, don't do it too quick. People are like, what's your problem?
Yeah.
I like how Mark in the chat is making it a 4D model. He said it's the emotion, the voice.
He's not giving it up.
I love it. It's 4-dimensional.
It's all very Jersey Mark Russell.
It is.
Thank you.
I love it. So the book, right? It's out there. It's a thing. What are you guys taking away from people interacting with a book? Like, when you're talking to folks who read the book, what's resonating for people?
I think one of the things that's really resonating for people is this idea of like, there's two types of convincers. And this is just like a very basic idea, right? Where, and how we want to be convinced. There's only two types, right? So there's emotional-based convincers and there's fact-based convincers. And we're not saying that there is one or the other, but you have a preference, right? And so you have a preference in the way you convince, but you also have a preference in the way you're convinced by someone else, right? So while you might be a fact-based person, when you're trying to convince someone else, like data and stats and research, and I'm going to get every HBR article on this topic before I even talk to you. But then when you want to be convinced, you want to be convinced through emotion, stories, feelings, like how this can connection, relationships, right? And so you have a preference. And sometimes just reading a room to say, this group of people probably wants emotion. I'm going to throw facts in there. I will, but I will lead with the thing that I think this group will resonate most with. And that seems to be something people, right, Chip?
Absolutely.
Some people really get.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. We use a lot of psychometric profiles in the work that we do. And, DISC is one that's pretty, it's pretty, in the focal area for us. we've been using a ton of disc. I've been using it for a long time. And Adele, when you were just saying, there are ways that you like to convince and ways that you like to be convinced. I'm a disc C. I'm a data person. So my pattern, my inclination when trying to convince somebody is to convince them in the way that I want to be convinced, which means I show up with all of my spreadsheets and my tabs and my source data and links to stuff. And if I'm trying to convince Lori or my coworker Ruby, they are I's and IS's and on the right side of the disk model. They don't even want to see my data. And it's so good. Adele, my data is so good. And it just doesn't land, right? So,
or at least it doesn't land as the initial hook.
Right.
Initial hook has to hit home. Then I'll be interested in your facts and figures. But if I don't get the initial hook, I'm like, me.
It's so funny though, right? Because on my end, because I've had a lot of people, like I'm an executive coach as well, and I coach a lot of people, and they'll say things to me like, my gut says this is what I need to do. And I'm like, that is not enough, man.
What data you have to prove your gut?
Like,
it's not a strategy.
You got nothing. You got nothing. Why do you feel that way? I don't know. It just, I had a dream. I'm like, no. That's not how we make decisions.
Eric, I'm recently divorced. I was married to an engineer, and I really wanted to buy a Mercedes. And
nope.
They're really impractical for so many reasons, right? So I started out my strategy with, I've always wanted one. I think I'll look good in it. I deserve it. I have earned enough money to get it. Right? And
that one holds a little bit of water. I've earned enough money to get it.
Okay, maybe.
I'll look good in it. You'll look good in a Nissan too, Adele. So.
No, that's good. So then I was like, I'm doing this all wrong. And I went back and I was like, okay, so it's got the highest safety, measures. It's got the best resale value. It's got a lot of coffee cup holders. When I went down the data, right? Yeah. And then I got the car. I got the car. I bought it with my money. Thank you very much. But I still got the Mercedes. The point is like you just have different types of convincers in your life, right? You have different types of people that you're trying to, influence, and you got to change your strategy based on what they want to hear. It's different.
Yeah, we talk about like if I'm somebody who speaks in hearts and flowers, but you hear in nuts and bolts, we're trying to have a conversation and we're not landing. And it's not out of anybody's lack of engagement in the topic. It's just we're not speaking the same language. And so how can you have that awareness or how can you at least combine, right? I got to have a little of both if I'm going to connect with this person. Right. And so it's that you need that self-awareness to know everybody doesn't do it the same way you do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys had a tease line in your one sheet that caught my eye. It said, what most convincing people do to forge a lasting bond. And, my brain goes to it's some FBI trickery. You're hooking someone in with, some bait and switch, I'm like all super skeptical and poking holes in it. And Adele's like, no, I'm just being an honest human being and hearing you and validating you. So what do most convincing people do to forge a lasting bond?
Chip, that's all you.
No. Okay, see, you're validating his suspicions about me, Adele. You got to be the one that answers this.
Not wrong.
Yeah. So I think really for us, it is, active listening does a lot of that. I really believe that. Now, the idea has to be, and I think the other Lori on the call also was saying, hey, how is this different from being manipulative, right? And the idea there is that we always say it is a tool. It is a straight up tool, right? And it's a powerful tool. And just like any tool can be used for good or evil, right? You could build a house with a hammer, you could break a window with it. Mm-hmm. And the idea is that we want to instill in leaders the very best of how to connect with another person, in as much as it will drive them to want to emulate, to do the things that you value and are important to the company, but also benefit them. in their growth. So that's what we always do. And at least that's what we should strive to do. Now, people can misuse that all day, right? All day.
You mean Chip, like the guy that sold Adele her Mercedes?
Well, actually, Adele's got a great story, and because part of our book had to do with, who are the most convincing people in the world. And it was funny because Adele said, who's really convincing? And there's a Springsteen connection here, by the way. And she said, they're fortune tellers. Those folks are really convincing. I'll let Adele tell the story.
Okay, so when I was in high school, I was in a creative writing class, and your creative writing teacher is always a little weird and wacky. So she invited in a fortune teller who was Madame Marie
into the school
to do
never
a
happened
reading, right? Like it would never happen, right? Like that's so weird, but it really did happen. And
who was it, Adele, that she invited in?
It was Madame Marie, who was the person who was the influence for Bruce Springsteen's song, because I grew up on the Jersey Shore. So the boardwalk was right there. She knew her. It was a thing.
Amazing.
So she, my main name's Gambardella, right? So it's this I'm the chunky Italian girl. And she zeroed in on me, and she's just like, you have a father figure of some kind with the letter J, P. I'm seeing J. It's I'm from New Jersey. I'm all Italian. I mean, if my dad's name's not Joe, John, Giovanni, whatever, right? It's of course it's a Joe. I was that's not hard, right? And she's just I'm seeing that he had some heart trouble again with my mom's meatballs, not a far stretch, right? And he had some heart trouble and I'm seeing this and I was like, oh my God, she really gets me. Right. And why did I fall for it? And essentially it's this concept called the foyer effect. And it is incredibly effective at work to validate people in a way that they haven't been validated before. And what it is this technique where you use a little bit of positive and a little bit of negative. So it's this idea, and it's not sandwich method. It's much more, sophisticated than that. It's a predictive statement is what it's called. And it's, Lori, I think you are a really nice person, but I think, you have an enormous amount of untapped potential if you could just channel your inner mean girl. And you're just I do have an enormous amount of untapped potential.
She does.
And I can be mean,
really
right?
nice.
And I can be mean. I can be mean. But it's just great. So what you want to do there is I've just opened it up for you to tell me, what is your untapped potential? Most of us take no interest in other people. We don't. Fortune tellers really all are about pulling out things that you don't want to tell anybody. And then they pull it out and you walk away and go, that was a miracle.
I love it so much. And remind me at the end, I've got an idea I want to talk to you about. The guy we were talking about, my buddy, coworker, super duper Springsteen fan. He is a keynote speaker now and grew up as a street performer. He's a magician and mind reader. And it's part of his shtick now, what you were just saying, Adele, because he always breaks it to his audience after the fact. Spoiler alert, I'm not psychic and there is no magic. Because he reads minds just like Madame Marie, right? And people want him to be successful in doing so.
Yes.
And that's it.
What I love about that, and because, as you were doing the Madame Marie, and it's I see that he has heart issues, me and probably Chip are going, okay, this could be a medical thing. This could be an emotional thing. She's propping the door open. You're going to tell me what it is. And then I'm going to go, yes, that's exactly what I was doing.
Right. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, because Chip said you can use it for good, you can use it for evil. So as a leader, as a manager, how do you do that without seeming slimy and Herb Tarlick from WKRP in Cincinnati, right? How do you do it genuinely and not in an overly slimy way?
Chip, that's all you.
Yeah. So one of the things is that, there are various ways that we try to get people to do various things, right? And that's whether you're a team leader, you're boss, and you've got to get folks to follow a certain regime, schedule, whatever, back to work, not, back to office or not, right? So always the thing that is going to be the most effective is, what is it that is going to strongly resonate and benefit that other person? What is it that, again, getting back to our, forensic listening and the unstated narrative, what is it that they're striving for?
Mm-hmm.
What is it that I have yet perhaps to tap into, to see and develop in that person, that they'll trust me to that extent, that if they, can get on board with what I'm doing here, and it's really going to move their own personal journey forward as well. And that's, with the thing, and this is what we always say, is that, as a hostage negotiator, I never actually negotiated with anyone. That wasn't my job. It's kind of a misnomer, right, in the title. My job was to convince that person. I was never, let's say, they got, 7 people in a house, they got a gun to somebody's head, and it was never, and they demanded, I need $2 million in a plane. Never going to happen. Right? Never, ever going to happen. But did I talk about the $2 million in the plane?
Of course you did.
All day, right? I'm stretching out the time, right? Yeah. We're going to talk about the plane. We're going to talk about, well, where would you go if you got on that plane? And what would you do with that money? I'm just curious. Like what is it that's, you said 2 million, that's a very specific amount. Is there something going? So I'm talking, but the idea there is that I'm extracting. My job is to listen and to allow them to tell me what it is. I'm just setting the table.
Yeah.
And what I'm doing slowly is getting into that person's psyche, into their head, so that soon that they will see there's really not going to be a plane. There's really not $2 million coming. Mm-hmm. But soon he's going to recognize is that I'm the guy that can offer him safety today. Right. And I want him to value that. I want him to value that, hey, life's a great thing. You could actually do a great thing here by releasing those people and surrender to me right now. And you know what? You'll look so much better in doing that. Mm-hmm. So, but we don't start there. We don't ever start there. But what I'm trying to do is show him the benefit. Hey, you stick with me. I'm here for you. I'm going to be here through the duration. We're going to work this out. Right. Mm-hmm. And so it was never going to be, the negotiate where, all right, you got 7 people in there. Tell you what, give me back 4, kill 3, call it a day. That wasn't going to happen. Right. That's not a thing. So I had to slowly convince that guy, because he's got all the power. He can decide in an instant to change, just like any team leader, anybody that works for us. They can decide, you know what, you're full of crap. I'm out, and they're never going to get on board if they start to see you're inauthentic. You're just doing it to pull the ring in their nose. No, no one wants to follow that. Right?
People can energetically feel inauthentic, when somebody's not being authentic. Right? Yeah. Like they're just like,
Their BS meter goes off.
So my takeaways today are, I never want to play poker against Chip. I would play all day against Adele. And before we open it up to questions, because I know we're running up on time here, how do we learn more about you and the book? Where do we find you out there on the worldwide interwebs?
Sure. Go to trainingsogood.com and go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble and pick up our book and write a nice review. The
reviews matter, right?
Yeah.
They do. You know that, Eric.
I hope you saw in the comments, our own Mark Russell said, I love Amazon. My book is being delivered tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yay! Thank you so much. We appreciate that. Thank you. Woo-hoo.
All right. I want to open it up to questions and then get on to our end of show routine. I'm going to de-spotlight everybody here. Who has got a question? Usually I rely on Ruby for this because she's been taking notes frantically. But Ruby is in Venice today, so she's not around.
The nerve.
Yeah, I know, the nerve. I tell everybody that she's going on a stupid Mediterranean cruise. So
Love that girl.
Because we're jealous.
because we're jealous. Absolutely. Any questions for Chip and Adele before we crank up the funny things?
I'll do affirmation more than a question, but the deep listening. As soon as Chip started talking about forensic listening, it's like, yeah, you got to get down, remove the junk, and really dig, mine away, as we've heard before, some of our groups. But yeah, it's interesting how you can start reading people. And I had two experiences yesterday. One was I made somebody cry yesterday.
On purpose?
For a good reason. For benefit of Chip and Adele, I do a lot of training. I'm an in-flight support coach at an airline, and I'm frantically training lately. But anyway, yesterday had a delightful young man and from Puerto Rico, and he was so nervous and just, I'm like, hey, it's going to be good. It's going to be good. Everything went fine. And at the very end, I am all about affirmation, public affirmation. Mm-hmm. And on the plane, I say, with conclusion of today's flight, we have one of our newest flight attendants ever, and he cried, and he was so happy and so moved by it. I've never had anybody cry before. And I was like, oh, I love it. So it was so just good. Very moving and really powerful, I think. And the cool thing is, a few weeks ago, I had a passenger come up to me and he goes, I was on the flight the day you introduced that new flight attendant. And I was like, I don't know when that was, awesome. Whatever, but creating positive influence and hopefully, setting a good example is so important. And then, like you're saying, you never know what somebody's going to say about you. So immediately after this flight, I'm walking to get home because I had a 12-hour day. And this woman in our uniform comes up to me. She goes, Lori, gives me a big hug. We flight attendants, we're all about hugging. And I said, hi, how are you doing? She goes, great. And she says, like, oh my gosh, you're the best. And our trip together, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I have no idea.
You're like, hey, you.
So it's like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's how you make people feel.
There it is.
Right. But also you just come across as so authentic, right? And like you really care. It's like very obvious in your
when I hit my
voice 60s, and approach. Yeah.
When I hit my 60s, I said, bag it. I'm kind of like more. I'm like, say what I think. No, I'm kidding.
Allison, I saw your hand go up. What do you got?
Yeah.
This is fascinating to me on 1,000 different levels. I'm a huge true crime fan. So Chip, like all the tells, like I have 1,000 questions for you, but in the sense of leadership development and things like that, I'm going to bring it back to business. In a sales organization, which I work in, influence is huge. And it's all about like, how do you shine your influencing skills and things like that. I'm curious how you see the difference between like convincing versus influencing. Is that main difference that you get actual buy-in back from them on the convincing? This is something in my salesy mind. I'm not a salesperson, but like in the sales world mind, thank God. It's really close. It's very gray. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Adele, do you want to?
No, you can take that.
Okay. So yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think that, people often say is that, really, we use the word negotiation. Everything's a negotiation. It's not, negotiation is kind of like the final step. It's kind of like perfunctory. If you think about the highest level of, when they talk like, heads of state, world leaders, they get together, like whenever there is something that has to be hashed out, when they go to Camp David, it's not about, all right, so what is, your country going to do for me? It's going to be about, tell me about your grandkids.
Yeah.
What kind of world do you want for them? It's those things, right? That are the breakthrough moments. And if you're in a place that you are just only, talking about, shoving a piece of paper across the table and working on price on something, right? You're in a bad spot. Right, because you haven't already developed that relationship, that understanding of that other person. We say, it begins in that first phone call, that first contact, when you first met that person. And I agree with you 100%, Alice, is that it is with convincing. It is also influence. It is also, how do you represent it to that other person, to what you're leading, as this is who I am. And I want so badly, because I believe so badly in what I'm about and what I represent in this company and what we're trying to push
reverse
out.
the focus, right, Christian?
Yeah,
right,
there,
right.
yes.
Yep, reverse the focus. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
yeah, just to add to that a little bit, like one of the things we say in the book, which is so counterintuitive to anything I learned as a journalist, was never ever start with your strongest point first. If you walk into a room, like have you guys ever walked into a meeting where you're just like, you start out with your strongest point first, and everybody in like 11 seconds just shuts their computer, walks away, and says,
you got nothing.
That's awesome. So if you start with your strongest point first, you just make people dig their heels in. And so what you want to do, the convincing strategy we talk about in our book is move them down a convincing continuum. And you want to start with your point of agreement. What is your point of agreement? And then you want to take them through fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So what's their FUD, right? What do they fear about what it is you're trying to talk about? What is their uncertainty? What is their doubt? And you use those things to kind of push and pull so they get to convince themselves. And you just leave them with just enough information that they want to go and research what you've described themselves, so that they come back to you in the next conversation. They're more open to new ideas. They're cognitive, you're kind of unfreezing their cognitive biases. And so they're more open to what you have to say the next time you're there. Convincing is a process. It can be done if you're methodical about it, but you have to have a point where you stop. And you have to have the discipline to stop. And most of us just want to go all the way.
Close the deal. Yeah.
Close the deal.
Let's go.
Can't do it.
I love it.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Their names are Chip and Adele, and you can find out more at trainingsogood.com. And I think I'm leaving again with another takeaway that Adele is a warm, caring human being and Chip is a cold, uncaring robot. It's okay.
Son of a bitch.
Thank you guys
by the way, it's always the opposite. It's always
I know, and you're from Jersey and you come across as warm and caring. I don't get it. You're good at your craft. Thank you so much for being here with us today. This has been a ton of fun. I'm
you guys are hilarious.
Into the book. Awesome. All right, let's get into our end of show routine, our funny things, good feels story, and our goofy cocktail. Funny things that made me giggle over the last week or so. Funny thing number one, I wish other jobs let us solve issues by releasing diss tracks. I got some sick rhymes about Debbie from accounting and her poorly structured invoicing. And speaking of rhymes, early 90s rap music, I'll just let you sing it in your head. Pack it up, pack it in. Let me begin. Adele's dancing. There it goes. For my introverts out there, if you work from home, you might go multiple days without speaking to another human being, but there are downsides too. Because Lori and I are going to Mexico in June and we're doing a thing for not the first time. That's what this one's about. I'm my best man at my buddy's second wedding. Is it appropriate to open my dinner speech with "Welcome back, everyone"?
That's great.
Oh my God.
This one's for great. Chip because of his first career. Confession booth. Me. I committed all 7 deadly sins in 30 minutes. Priest. Well, I got to hear this. Me. I was angry and envious of my neighbor, so I lazily seduced his wife and ate all of his groceries and didn't share. Priest said, "You forgot pride." Me. No, I'm pretty proud of this.
Awesome.
But my favorite funny thing is Jeff Goldblum, because Jeff Goldblum is just funny. Right. And turns out he's funny in real life. Naming a child River and then saying row your own boat is diabolical. This is the New York Post tweet. Jeff Goldblum refuses to leave money to his kids, Charlie 8 and River 6. quote, row your own boat. I mean,
really good.
Come on. All right. Today's Good Feel story is about a baby.
No.
CBS's Steve Hartman goes on the road with two police officers and their incredible connection beyond the badge.
Hartman, you get us every time.
Come on.
Dang it.
Every
That's so
time.
good. Oh, wow. Wow.
Today's semi-quarantined cocktail is in honor of the state of Maine, where Lori and I go every summer. It's called Bees. It's a riff on the bee's knees cocktail. You're going to need a half ounce of honey syrup. There is an extra step for that. One truck carrying bees to pollinate the blueberry fields in Maine, because apparently this is a thing. They truck bees in to pollinate these fields.
Dang.
Need a little bit of lemon juice. So the truck flipped over and slid off the road. First responders did not know that the cargo was bees.
Oh, God.
And they learned the hard way. 2 ounces of gin. 15 million bees were released. A little lemon twist for garnish. And most of the bees were contained. They brought in some beekeepers and they got them all put back together and corralled. The bees were a little sluggish. It was cold. It was about 40 degrees. And then they eventually got to work pollinating those blueberries for all of those fantastic blueberry muffins and blueberry pies that will happen in Maine this summer. Thanks, everybody, for being here with us today. Got nothing but gratitude for you all. Thanks to Chip Massey. Thanks to Adele Gambardella. You guys were awesome. I am so looking forward to getting into that book. Take care, everybody. Have great dinners, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you so much for joining us today. If you had a good time and learned a thing or two at today's happy hour, please share it with your friends. If you want to join our tribe, head on over to skyeteam.cloud/TCB or email us at info@skyeteam.com. That's SKYE team.com. Thanks again, and remember, you've always got friends at the Corporate Bartender.